Welcome, everyone. My name is Michael Kraft. I'm one of the coordinators of the Bluefield Arts Festival. And tonight you will be treated to two live art demos. Please visit the festival website, bluefieldartsfestival.com, to view the artwork from over 60 artists and to sign up for our other free webinars, which include tomorrow night's artist enrichment, and we conclude on Thursday with a curator's Q&A. Please stay muted during the webinar. Write any questions in the chat. And please share your art links in the chat so that we can all support one another. And I asked both Adele and Jessica to post their website and any social media so you can check out more of their artwork as well. So, up first, I'd like to introduce Adele Sciortino, who identifies as an eclectic fine art artist, which is a perfect description. She really has mastered everything from art drawing, photography, fiber art, but tonight it will all be about her drawing. So, Adele, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you'll be showing us tonight.
Well, welcome everyone. I'm so glad to see so many here, and I've recognized a few of you. And I've had a lot of people asking me, how do I start my drawings? Well, the first thing I'd like to do is canvas some of my photography because I like to work from my own photos. And just to give you a quick example, this particular picture here was a car that I took in Havana, Cuba. And when I start working with my photographs and I'm getting ready to do my drawings, I always make an outline. And the outline is basically I enlarge the picture to where I want it to be for the drawing. So I work from a tracing paper. I do an outline. I don't put every detail in it because I use my color pencils for that to add any kind of textures or reflections like they were in this particular car. So the picture that you see behind me is the actual drawing of the car. So you can see it looks pretty much, trying to figure out where I'm at, pretty much like this. Now, I work with hot press paper or graphics film, which is a very, very smooth paper. And I would like to show you a little bit about my workstation and tell you something about the pencils that I use. Okay. So this particular piece that I'm working on is a commission piece. And the customer had decided he wanted this particular seal. So that's what I'm working on right now. And as you can see, turn on some brighter light for you. What I'm using here, the paper I'm using is a graphics film. And the reason that I select the graphics film, not only do I like to work with very smooth paper, I can achieve really tight details when I work with the graphics film. The only thing about graphics film is it does not absorb any kind of pencil. It lays right on the surface. So when you are using a graphics film, you have to do light layers to be able to get any kind of blending. The pencils that I use are polychromos. They're oil-based pencils, and they blend beautifully. And the reason I use these particular ones is because they're called light fast. So in other words, they have longevity. They do not fade out. And that's real important, especially when you're doing any kind of art like this. You want it to be around for a long time. Of course, it's like anything else that you hang up in your house, any piece of artwork, you don't want direct sunlight on it anyway. But that's the beauty about these pencils. Now, when I start working on anything, I like to do the picture the same size of the picture that I'm working on because then I can see the details. I also work with an iPad. and I enlarge on the iPad to see very, very close up on some areas that I can't see on the picture. When I work with my pencils, let's see, I go and I move it over and I put my finger of where I want to be so I can look back and forth on my picture. And I move very, very slowly and I start applying the first layers and I do a very light pressure to put the first layer on because remember, the paper does not absorb the pencil. And if I put very, very heavy pressure, what happens is I lift the layers up instead of allowing it to blend. So I start with different colors. I get the main color that I think that's at the very bottom because when you start layering your colors, it just all starts melting together and it gives a very pretty, um, as you can see here, they start working together and by stroke, by stroke, by stroke. It's a very long process to work with pencil. Does anybody have any questions? I don't see any Can you see them on your end, Mike?
I don't see any questions, but
Okay.
about how long have you been working on this, and how long on an average do these pieces take?
I normally take about, depending on the piece, it could go over 100 hours very easily. This particular piece will probably hit that because it takes me a while. Once I get block in all of the colors in the piece, I have to go back in and do the details like the whiskers and really study it to make sure that I've caught the light on this particular one I'm talking about. Because right now he's coming out of the water and it is sunrise. So that glow has to show on this side. So I have to make sure I don't get very heavy-handed on this side and make sure it looks like the sun is coming from this direction.
There's another question. Do
Hmm.
you use fixative?
No, I don't use fixative.
Okay.
No,
And
I strict.
no,
Go
go
ahead.
on, sorry.
No, no, go ahead.
How do you sharpen your pencils?
Well, I work with very sharp pencils. When I started drawing, all my pencils are very sharp. I'll show them to you. It's much easier for me to work with pencils that are really sharp, especially when I'm doing details. I use an electric sharpener to start with, and then if I really want to get a very uh, pointy pencil, I use this, it's called a black wing hand sharpener. I'm trying to find there, black wing sharpener. And it just tips off that end there and it makes it like, it's like a little needle. It's so sharp. Sometimes I use that, but I use an electric sharpener. It's called AFMAT, AFMAT. Any,
Adele, is there a difference in the time it takes when you're doing, say, like a seal or a person, animals or people?
well, it doesn't matter if I'm doing a seal or a portrait. The one thing I always have to keep in mind is the direction. Let's say on the seal, I have to make sure the direction of the fur is going according to the anatomy of the animal. And it's the same thing for a portrait. You have to be very conscientious of let's say the cheekbones. You don't want the cheekbones where the mouth is. So you have to understand a bit of the anatomy, whatever you do, whether it's a dog, a cat, any kind of animal, you should understand a bit about where the under part of what's going on under the skin to be able to lay any kind of fur or whatever, hair or feathers, anything like that. You have to be really aware of that.
We have another question. Does the pencil rub off or smear?
It will. You have to be very careful with this. I do not spray my any of my drawings. I'm very careful when I'm handling them. On this particular one, I'll show you this. The background, it was a two-step, this background. I used Neo um, pastel, their pastels and their oil base. The first layer I used those. And when I blended the Neo pastels, generally I will do this to blend them. But on this particular one, I did not do that because of the waves. So I I imagined that I needed to go with the waves. So when I blended it, I just went back and forth versus doing this. Now, all of the extra details, I came in and I used the color pencils on top of the Neo pastels, which worked out really well.
Okay, so well, we have more of a comment, but maybe you can elaborate on the
Okay.
paper that you use because someone has mentioned that they've been working in colored pencil for years, but not familiar with the paper that you use. They use
Okay.
mixed media paper.
Right. Well, I have always used very smooth paper. And when I came across, it's called graphics film, and it's matted on two sides. And it looks like this. It's very translucent. Let's see if you can see it. See, when I lay it over here, you can see right through it. Um, I like the matted graphics film because if I want to get a very dark black on my drawing, I can flip it over and put more black on the backside. And that gives me a blacker, let's say in the eyes, or if there's sometimes like the hair of the dog needs to be really black and I can't get it, it becomes gray on one side. So I flip it and then I put more black and it gives me a nice rich black. So for the person that's interested in using this, it's great, but it is takes you a little while to get used to it because the colors, like I said, do not absorb; they just stay on the surface.
Adele, so when this piece is finished, will you have this on any of your social media or your website for everyone to take a look at? Or
Yes, I'm always posting on Facebook, my on my social media. I'm posting progress. People like to see what I'm doing. I do get a lot of questions there too. And all every piece I start, it's a challenge because I have to figure out, what am I going to do? How am I going to approach it? And I don't work um, like I don't put all my colors down at once. I work in very small sections of the piece. As you can see, I finished the left side. Now I'm going to do the right side. It just seems to work best for me. When I'm doing an animal or a portrait, I always start with the eyes. It just seems like once I get some sort of personality on the piece, I'm on my way. I feel like I've already given him a soul or her a soul, and now I've got to give her the rest. So I like always starting with the eyes.
nice, nice. Well, thank you very much.
You're
If
welcome.
anybody has any more questions, they can always put them in the chat,
Yep.
and at the end of the session, we can ask more questions. So, thank you, Adele.
Uh, okay, somebody's asking a question
Oh, is
here.
there a
When,
question? Oh, here we go.
well, I
Yes.
didn't see it. It went away.
Um,
What does it say?
when blending the water, you rubbed your hand back and forth. So how do you stop at the edge of the seal?
Okay, what happens with the neopastels, they do go into the seal. I just let it go in, no problem, because I use a, as soon as I find it, I'll show it to you. once that happens, because it's going to happen, I just go in and I erase it. I can just get to the edge and I can erase it out and it just comes right off. Yeah. And just keep in mind that my outline, because you're wondering where's my outline is below. I don't know if you can see it, it's very light, but there's the outline that I work with. But once I get basically his eyes in and the shape of his head, and I know where the whiskers are, I don't refer to it anymore. Then I just strictly go by whatever's on the image that I'm working with.
Well, beautiful.
Thank you. I'm
Beautiful.
really excited about finishing him or her. I'm not
Love
sure what it is.
seals. Okay. So, up next, we have Jessica Cavaliere. Did I pronounce
Cavaliere.
that right?
Hi.
Who is an award-winning fiber artist who strives to capture the beauty, movement, and abundance of color found in nature. And she really does capture these details in her work. So, Jessica, tell us a little bit about this unique medium, and about yourself and what you'll be showing us tonight. And I'm going to pin you right now.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for coming. My name is Jessica Cavaliere. I am a fiber artist, as well as a middle school art teacher. And what does it mean to be a fiber artist? It means that my medium is wool. So I create wool paintings using unspun wool, which I will show you in just a minute. Those of you who have heard of needle felting before, typically when people think about needle felting, they think about creating little three-dimensional animals, which is one form of needle felting. I prefer to do two-dimensional needle felting, creating wool paintings, using wool and a little barbed needle. I tell people it is very much like tattooing, but with wool. So I'm going to go ahead and flip my camera so that I can show you some of the things that I'm talking about. Make sure. Here. Okay. So this is the piece that I was going to work on with you tonight. There we go. I just have a very simple piece, and very much like Adele, I very often work off of a photograph. I also do many different commissions, and I can show you. This is a commission of a black lab that I recently finished. He is all wool, lots of different layers of wool. And this is his sister. Another one, again, lots of different layers of wool. I recently, over the snow day, just worked on and finished up this felted piece. And the camera's a little close to show the whole thing. There we go. But again, this is entirely made of wool fibers that are laid out on top of each other. So I mentioned before that I use unspun wool. So wool, when it's processed, comes two different ways. This is called a wool bat. And I can unroll this and I can peel it apart in layers, right? Because it's processed very much in layers. And I can pull this apart and pull off little pieces that I will then drive down into my surface. I also use something called roving. So you can see that this is very different. It's very linear. And when I pull off pieces of the roving, rather than a sort of flat area, I have some long pieces. This is called the staple length, is the wool that I've pulled off of here. I also use a barbed needle, and I have lots of different ones here. I'm not sure if my camera's picking it up, but they are all different colors. They're color coded depending on the gauge and the shape. So each of these needles, this one is a 38 star. So the gauge of the metal is a 38, and the shape of the needle is in a star. And if I were to zoom in really closely, you would see little tiny, tiny barbs on the needle. And those barbs are what catch the wool and drive it down into the surface. So Ellen asked, when would I use roving and when would I use batting? And that's a great question. I primarily use batting because, as you'll see as I start needle felting my peach, I want to create different layers, almost like you would blend paint if you were painting, or layer on colored pencils like Adele does. I would use roving mostly if I want to have a nice line. So when I start to work on my leaves here, I would pull off some little tiny pieces and I can really manipulate it. And then I can start to make the different veins in the leaf. So, you want to, I love the fact that I can really manipulate the wool. And then I kind of use it as it is, right? So I can use this very linearly. I'm having trouble with that word tonight. The bats I can layer, and I can also, if I wanted to maybe make a circle, or again, if I'm starting with an animal's eye, right, I can manipulate the batting into a different shape. Is the outline a piece of canvas or another fabric? A great question also. So I didn't talk about my kind of process as I jumped into my materials. This green background is a piece of velvet. I love texture, so any sort of textured background I can find, I use. This portrait is on linen, so you can really needle felt on anything as long as you can get a needle through it. I primarily use linen, and I also use wool felt. This one, I have, the background is velvet, but my peach here is wool felt. So very much like Adele does, I will work on my iPad first. I do work from a photograph often. So here's the photograph of the peach that a friend of mine took. I will sketch it out on my iPad. I will print it, and then I will use a heat transfer pen to iron my image onto my wool felt. I do that because you can't draw on the wool felt with a marker or anything. It just becomes very sort of hairy, if that makes sense. So my background piece is velvet, and I have a piece of wool felt on top of it, if that helps. I hope that made sense. So again, as I'm starting this, I would start to layer on my pieces of wool. I'm going to start with the 38 needle. That one's sort of like the workhorse. It really drives the fibers down into the fabric much better. And as I start to then layer on my pieces of wool, I will use a much finer gauge. This one is a 42, and it will leave less holes. So it tends to blend the colors a little bit better as I'm working. The pad that I'm felting on, this is a wool. I have another one over here. So I like to use a wool mat. You can get mats that are also foam. I tend to like the wool one a lot better. It's just a lot more eco-friendly. It never wears out. If I were, wool is 100% biodegradable. So if I were ever to need to throw this away, I know that it wouldn't sit in a landfill forever, as opposed to a piece of foam. Unfortunately, when I do really large pieces, I actually just finished a piece that's 36 by 36. And I did need to work on a piece of foam for that. But I don't use it that often, so it will last a little bit longer. The wool pads I use quite a bit. So I'll just start to layer on. And I'll just start to layer on my colors. And then, once I have my base color on, kind of like an underpainting, if you will, then I can start to really layer the colors on top in order to get my highlights and my shadows.
Jessica, where do you get your get a wool pad?
Um, you can get wool pads on Amazon. There are also a few companies that I use. This small green one is from a company called Wool Buddy. And then another really nice supplier of beautiful wool and great wool pads is called Felted Sky, which is online. And they're all small businesses, which is really nice. And so I will just start to work on layering. And I can almost, if you can see, like pull the fibers really, really thin to kind of layer those colors on there and create sort of the variations in color. How far am I driving the wool down? Yeah, it's a good question. Maybe, yeah, I'd say about a ½ inch. You do need a good wool pad or even a foam pad because obviously if it's too shallow, your needle will hit the table underneath and break. And so very similar to Adele's process, it's a lot of layering on of the colors. Let me check back at my photograph here. So I'll look and see here. It's hard to see, there's a glare. It looks really purpley. But this is very dark here where there's a lot of light here. So I'll start to really build up those darker colors in the middle. And then at the very end, I'll go back over it and give this little bit of a reflection here on the peach. You'll notice too that the wool felt that I used for this is peach. And I do that on purpose when I can. Just because and there doesn't typically end up being any part of the wool felt showing through, but it does tend to camouflage a little bit better if I'm using something that's close to the color that I'm going to be felting with. So I had, for example, I did a night sky with a barn owl, and that one I did on a very dark purple background. Just in case there's any little bit that's showing through, it's not quite as obvious. Doing the dark dog on a light background, there are many, many layers because I had to make sure that I covered up the lighter linen background.
Jessica, and how long do these pieces take? I guess, I mean, this is a smaller piece. And then I would imagine the larger pieces take much longer, but on like the average small and large, how long do they take?
Gosh, it depends on how detailed they are. Um, some of my larger, more abstract pieces, even though they're a good size, they might not take very long. But it's always hard because I don't ever sit down and time myself, which I always mean to do. But I would say, some of my larger, more detailed pieces can take up to a few months. I'm also, because I also teach full time, I'm not working on them all day, every day. So on and off. But the really nice thing about needle felting is that, you don't have to wait for the paint to dry. I could pick up and run upstairs and make dinner right now. And, I can come back to this when I have 5 minutes. Um, so it is really hard to sort of, have a good number, but this small peach, I don't know, it might take me up to 10, 12 hours. And it's, maybe 5 by 5, just because, especially with the leaves and the stem, it's going to be very detailed. What
I
else?
have a
Do I dye
question.
the wool myself? That's a great question. I would absolutely love to dye the wool myself, although it would not be very economical to do that. Um, it would be so labor intensive. The price that I would need to charge for my pieces, I would just never would recoup it. Um, Although it is something that, when I retire and I have more time at home, I would love to dye more of my own wool, but right now I don't. I buy it all. And that's leads me to another thing, which is wool, very much like paint, can kind of be blended. So let's say I wanted to have, a color that was sort of in between the two of these. I can go ahead and blend these fibers. As long as I continuously pull them in the same direction, it will take a little while, but the colors will blend together. I often need to do this on different commissions. I recently had a silver lab, which I'd never heard of before. It looked like a wine mariner, in case anyone was wondering. But it was very much sort of like an olivey, greeny, gray silver. And so I really had to blend a lot of my own wool for that. Um, Amelia asked, does that mean if you wanted to put a light image on a dark background, you'd have to do many layers of wool on top? Yes. Especially if I were to do like a white dog on a black background, I would definitely need to add a lot more layers of the white in order to make sure that the black didn't show through. And where do I get my wool? So I mentioned before, Felted Sky is one of my favorite vendors. Her wool is really, really beautiful, and she's got a really great range of colors. I've also bought through Living Felt and Gray Fox Felting as well. And they're all small businesses, which is really nice.
Jessica, will you have this up on your social media for people to see the finished product?
I will. I will. Yeah. I definitely post more to my Instagram than to my website. It's a lot easier to post to Instagram and faster than it is to post to my website. So, yeah, if you're interested in tuning in, you can keep an eye out for it.
So hopefully everybody will follow along with Jessica and Adele on their social media so they can check out the finished results of the pieces that they have shown us tonight. So is there anyone that has any other questions for Adele or Jessica?
It is very meditative. It is very therapeutic. And the really nice thing about it is if you make a mistake, you can either felt right over it or you can actually pull the wool out and just start again.
Adele, do you have a preference on which medium you work in?
Well, right now it's colored pencil. Yeah, I'm pretty much dedicated to working with colored pencil. My goal is to achieve hyperrealism. That's what I keep striving for.
Well, you both do incredible work, and the
Thank you.
realism that you both put into these pieces is pretty unbelievable. I mean, I'm a photographer, so I'm I'm really impressed by people that can draw. I know a lot of times you guys do you take a photo as a reference,
Right.
but a lot of times I think to myself, oh, if I knew how to draw, I could, if I had something in my mind, I could just do it. Do either one, and this is a question for both of you. Do either
Mm,
one of you do pieces where you just have something in your head and you're like, okay, I need to get this out on paper or on fiber or however.
absolutely. Uh, as I'm working on one, I'm already thinking about what I'm going to do next. And I
Yeah.
keep adding to that list.
Yeah, the piece that I have in the Bluefield Art Festival right now was one of those pieces.
Mm,
Um, just I needed to get it out and get it down.
That's great. Yeah, I'm really envious of that because I always have to, I got to find a model, I got to find the props, I got to, you know, so, um, well, does anyone else have any other questions? No? Do you have questions for each other?
Good job, Jessica.
Thank you. I have many questions, but we'll talk again, I hope, Adele.
Yes, yes, we will. We will. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Which
There's a question, yeah.
somebody's asking me. Oh, Dawn, it's the let me disconnect it and I'll show it to you. Just give me a minute. Because I don't know the name of it, but I can surely show you what it looks like. It's like this. It's this one. It's really you have to be careful though, because it will eat your pencils. So I get them sharp and then I stop because it will keep grinding them. So be careful. It does seem to stop, but it can continue. But I really love the sharpener. I've had it for um, close to 2 years and it's still going strong. And yeah, you can get it at Amazon.
Well, thank you, Adele and Jessica, for joining us tonight and
You're welcome.
and
It was
sharing
nice being here.
sharing
Thanks
how
so
you
much
do
for
your
talking to us.
work.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you to all the other artists for participating in the exhibit. Please check out the website, bluefieldartsfestival.com, to check out all of the pieces. And also, these webinars will be going up on YouTube. So if there's anything you wanted to go back and take a look at, you'll be able to check those out. So it is most important to keep art alive, stay creative, and most importantly, support your fellow artists. Thank you and good night.